Hello everybody and welcome to a video on the Pole Position YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be looking at some of the news headlines from the first part of this week, because obviously this week now is the build up to the Austrian Grand Prix. Yeah, like we said, F1's back. I'm happy to be doing more videos now, hopefully be doing a preview of the Austrian Grand Prix at the end of the week as well, video coming out on the channel. So yeah, hopefully getting as many videos out as possible in this start of the season now, but I'm just going to go through some of the news headlines of the week so far before the season starts. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first news story I want to talk about is something that Zak Brown has said in the last couple of days, and that is Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris will be the most exciting driving lineup for 2021. Now, I know the first news story of the week that I'm going to be talking about is for 2021, when the season for 2020 is just about to start, but hear me out. Obviously it's already been announced, like we know a couple of months ago, that Daniel Ricciardo would be going to McLaren when Carlos Sainz moves to Ferrari for the 2021 season to partner Charles Leclerc. Now, as people might be aware, one, I am a huge McLaren fan, and two, I'm a huge Daniel Ricciardo fan. So for me, this is the perfect thing to have one of my favourite drivers in my favourite team. For me, it's perfect to have. We have discussed before that maybe Daniel Ricciardo, the possibility of him winning the Formula 1 World Championship may have gone in his career, which is a bit of a shame. Obviously, it's still there, and hopefully in the next couple of years when the budget cap actually comes into effect, that actually might help any team trying for the goal of winning the Drivers' and the Constructors' World Championship. But Daniel Ricciardo, like I said, in McLaren is exciting, and Zak Brown spoke about this recently, and obviously losing Carlos Sainz is quite big. I think the driver dynamic between Sainz and Norris is really good. I think they've really worked as a team in the last year. And of course they've obviously got this season as well to work together, even though it's a short calendar. But yeah, he spoke about it and he said, obviously we've had outstanding experience with Carlos. We obviously have this year to go, but we are excited to have Daniel Ricciardo joining the team for 2021. Daniel's a driver that we wanted a couple of years ago. Obviously I've spoken about this before, where they wanted to have him when he moved to Renault. Obviously that wasn't a possibility back then, because I think that McLaren was still in that transition period where obviously Alonso was still there as well, and they were still sort of struggling, and Renault obviously at that time looked like the better option, but in this last year, McLaren have really kicked on compared to Renault with a really poor year last year. Zak Brown said he's very exciting on the track, and he's also very exciting off the track, which of course we know. If you haven't seen the video that F1 did where they were doing World Association, almost everybody that the word Joker came up was obviously people said Daniel Ricciardo, which obviously just shows the personality that Daniel Ricciardo has off the track. I think it'd be a great combination between Daniel and Lando. I also think so, because people that didn't say Daniel Ricciardo said Lando Norris, but although both of them get the term Joker, both of them are serious when it comes to being on the track. So yeah, I don't think that would be any issue for me, but I think their PR events would be pretty fun at McLaren for 2021. Not that they're not now, because I think Carlos Sainz has got a great personality as well, and like I said, they've worked together really well in the last year that they've been working together at McLaren. But yeah, it is an exciting prospect for me, to obviously have Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris for McLaren next year, a Mercedes engine in there for 2021 as well, bringing back the McLaren-Mercedes partnership, which will be interesting. So yeah, I'm really excited of seeing that. He went on to say about the Mercedes engine, saying it will have a benefit of having the Mercedes engine in 2021. But obviously you've got to look at the upgrades as well, and how that'll work, because with this token system that's been created, we're having to use some of our tokens to adapt our chassis for the Mercedes engine. So they could be on a bit of the back foot at the start of the year, but hopefully the fact that they've got the Mercedes power in the car, if they build a good car in terms of chassis, then hopefully with the engine as well, that should be beneficial. So yeah, that's just a quick news story about Zak Brown and Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris partner each other for McLaren for next year. What I'm now going to go on to is a bit of a obviously it's a subject that needs to be talked about, but Hamilton has been speaking about and making comments about what Bernie Ecclestone has said in terms of Black Lives Matter and what's been going on obviously in the last month or so in terms of the whole world has had to sort of look and realise what's been happening. And Bernie Ecclestone, who's obviously the former boss of Formula One, said some recent comments in an interview, regarding race inequality. And yeah, I mean, Bernie Ecclestone has always been outspoken. He's always said, what he thinks, and he's always said things to grab headlines, and that's just been Bernie. But yeah, he has said some comments really that maybe he shouldn't have. And obviously Lewis Hamilton has gone into that, and he put a I think an important post out. And when I first saw that Bernie had said these things, I instantly thought it's only a matter of time before one, Lewis sees them, and two, he gives his thoughts on it. And I think at this moment in time, he is the only black driver on the grid, and I think it's important that we hear his thoughts on things, because obviously I'm a white person. I don't have maybe the same feelings toward this as Lewis Hamilton would be, but I want to learn what his thoughts are, and what he thinks should be done in terms of Formula One in the sport. So when I read that his first instinct on this was, damn, I just don't even know where to start on this one. I was like, yeah, this is true, because obviously I don't want to say the comments that Bernie said. If you want to look at them, you can just find them somewhere, I guess. But it's sad and disappointing to read these comments. Bernie, is out of the sport and is a different generation, but this is exactly what is wrong, ignorant and uneducated. And shows how far we are as a society and need to go before real equality can happen. It makes complete sense to me that nothing was said or done to make our sport more diverse, or to address the racial abuse I received throughout my career. If someone who has run the sport for decades has such a lack of understanding of the deep-rooted issues we as black people deal with every day, how can we expect all the people who work under him to understand it starts at the top? And he's absolutely right. I think Bernie was a bit naive into saying this, and you think all them years in the sport, he would learn the best things to say and the best not. And I think Lewis is absolutely spot on. I mean, if Bernie does have these feelings towards it, then him being the boss of Formula One, it's not going to change. And I think back then he sort of had the overall majority of the decisions, and he made the decisions himself, to be honest. And yeah, if he had these views, then Lewis is right in the sense that this is why nothing got done in the past. So yeah, now the time has come for change. I will not stop pushing to create inclusive futures for our sport with equal opportunity for all, and to create a world that provides equal opportunity for minorities. He's absolutely right, and obviously F1 have been doing things as well, and creating their own task force and foundation. We Race as One initiative designed to increase diversity and inclusion in the sport, and it's absolutely right. I think it needs to be done. I think also it says the same for women as well. I want to see more women in the sport. Whether it be engineers, whether it be pit crew, whether it be people working behind the scenes, people working back at the factory. I think it's important to have as many people working in the sport as possible. I really do believe that, and I think if we can move this forward, it's vitally important. And I think obviously we've heard from Bernie Ecclestone, but we know for one that Bernie isn't in the sport anymore. F1 as a company and Livery Media have said that Bernie doesn't even have a honour thing anymore for the sport. That finished at the end of the beginning of this year, so he's not affiliated with the company, Livery Media or Formula One anymore at all. So yeah, they completely pushed it aside and said, look, he's not part of us anymore, this is what we're doing. And I think that was vitally important. So yeah, obviously Hamilton's speaking out, and it's very important that he does that, and I'm interested every time he puts a post out about it, because I want to learn as well. I want to see the thoughts of him and everybody else really. But obviously being a Formula One fan and Lewis Hamilton being the only black driver on the grid, you want to understand the thoughts that are going on. So yeah, that's just a quick thing about obviously Lewis Hamilton commenting on Bernie Ecclestone's comments. Yeah, if you want to read obviously what Bernie said, you can probably find it somewhere. Right, and now we've got to talk about something that's really, really good to see. I'm getting really excited, I don't know why, but Williams have revealed their new livery for the 2020 F1 season. Now obviously, you know, this was already announced, we already had pictures of the car, we already had pictures of the team, outfits and everything, with Rocket being their team sponsor, but obviously that disappeared. It was revealed last month that, you know, they decided to end their relationship early. So the red has gone off the car. It no longer looks like Colgate toothpaste, and it's now got a predominantly white livery with bands of navy and baby blue flowing through the car. This is what F1 have said, and I absolutely love this car. This is a great looking car. I mean, if it is quick, then even better, but I mean, if we do get to see it running at the back of the grid, then at least it'll be a nice looking car to see at the back of the grid. I'm hoping, like I've said before, that, you know, Williams have really perked up and you know, they are more attached to the midfield this year. Ever hopeful, but yeah, I'll hopefully put some pictures on of the car now, but yeah, it looks really good looking, even better than it was before. Williams normally do a good job of their livery anyway, but this one is really good, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the car out on track. If I was Nicholas Latifi or George Russell, I'd be really happy to be driving that car out as well now. So yeah, just like I said, that was just a quick thing. Just wanted to talk about the Williams livery, but yeah, this looks really good heading into Austria. Hopefully it's given a newfound confidence in the team. Obviously we don't really know where they are until Friday when we get to see the practice, and obviously qualifying as well when they're at their fastest. But yeah, if that paint job probably puts another 10 brake horsepower on the car, then hopefully that'll help as well. But yeah, look, the car looks great. Hopefully Williams can perform this year, but yeah, that's the livery for the 2020 F1 season, and it looks good. And now I'm just going to quickly talk about F1, the F1 website. The writers that write for the Formula 1 website have had their thoughts and their predictions ahead of the new season. I was going to put this in the preview, but I think that in that one I'll probably go into a depth with about the race and everything anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the questions that they've been asked. I'm going to answer them as well. So I'm probably been a bit lazy here, not picking my own questions, but I thought, well, look, they've been given them, I might as well do them as well. So the first question is, who will benefit most from the revised calendar? That's a good question. A lot of them have put Red Bull, maybe Ferrari as well, but I'm going to pick a driver, and I'm going to pick Valtteri Bottas. For me, this has to be the year, and I've said this a couple of times now, but this has to be the year that Valtteri Bottas really performs. And I think having a less race calendar really should you know, put him into gear, because it's like, look, you know, there's less races to win the championship. If you start the season really well, and maybe the first 2 races in Austria, say you win, I know Max Verstappen's probably going to have a good start, and Red Bull are going to have a good start at the Red Bull Ring, surely, you know, that is a certainty. But I think if Valtteri Bottas picks up the first 2 wins, you know, going into the next couple of races is going to be huge, you know, to get them that first 2 major points. You know, whether that happens anyway would be, you know, I'm just guessing here, but I really think in terms of less races this year, it has to be Valtteri Bottas. You have to go into this season now thinking you've got less races to fight against Lewis Hamilton, you've got less races to mess up, as it were, because, you know, there are a few races in the year normally where Valtteri Bottas goes missing. If you've ironed them out this year, and like I've said before, Mika Hakkinen has said, you know, this is the time for Valtteri Bottas to really step up, then this really is the time for Valtteri Bottas to step up with less races. We've only got 8 confirmed at the minute. We're obviously going to finish the year at Abu Dhabi, which is going to be 9 races. I think Bahrain's in there as well as the second to last race of the calendar, whatever happens. But Bottas really does need to look at it this year and think, you know, if I don't even challenge this year, or you know, the points are still far away, then, you know, George Russell is going to be getting into that seat at Mercedes next year. That's my personal opinion. I really want Bottas to do well this year. I really do. I like Bottas as a driver and as a person off the track as well. Yeah, for me, you know, who will benefit the most from the revised calendar? It has to be Bottas. It just has to be. The next question is, which team will respond best following the unexpected shutdown? I mean, I was going into this year thinking Mercedes again, just because I think until the budget cap comes in, Mercedes are still going to be dominant. I just don't see that. A lot of them here are saying Mercedes, Mercedes, Mercedes. And even though, like I said, we're starting a double header at the Red Bull Ring, I still think throughout the year, Mercedes is still going to be dominant. I think Red Bull need to look at the first 2 races and think we need to really make sure this is a sort of slam dunk for us in terms of winning the first 2 races, and Max Verstappen as well. I think Alex Albon will be better than Pierre Gasly was last year. If you saw like the Netflix documentary, Pierre Gasly was getting a lot of stick from his engineer during that race, saying you've got to pick up the pace. You know, you're a Red Bull at the Red Bull Ring, and he was way down the order, I think. And I think Alex Albon will obviously be better than Pierre Gasly was last year, hopefully. But I still think, you know, following the unexpected shutdown, I think Mercedes will still be the team to sort of beat. I think I'd be interested to see where Racing Point are as well, because obviously a lot of talk was going on about them in testing, and just before the season was supposed to start in Australia, about where they were. I think it'd be interesting to see where they are, you know, come this weekend at the Red Bull Ring, and see, you know, have they actually really caught up to the top 3. So I think that would be interesting. McLaren as well, being a McLaren fan, I'd like to see where they are. But, you know, I don't know if the shutdown really has made much of a difference. You know, we won't know until what we had information-wise going into the Australian Grand Prix, whether that's changed dramatically what we see on Friday and Saturday at Austria. Yeah, for me, the team who will respond the best following the unexpected shutdown will still be Mercedes. Who will be the biggest surprise in this unusual season? Biggest surprise. As you can tell, I'm reading these straight away. I haven't had any thought into them, but I always think that goes best. For me, biggest surprise, I'd like to say, I want to say Williams, but I also want to say the 2 drivers as well at Williams. You know, like I've just said, talking about their livery, obviously the livery looks great, but in terms of them really progressing this year, I do think a lot of people were saying after testing as well, they really looked like they'd improved from where they were last year. I mean, to be honest, it couldn't have got any worse from where they were last year, but people were saying that it did look like they'd improved, and testing was good for them. You know, maybe catching on to the back of the Haas's, Alfa Romeo, you know, maybe getting into that midfield battle is good. I really don't want to see like we saw last year, where you've got the top 3 teams, the mid-table teams, and then Williams at the back, who are 2 to 3 laps down. That's just not good for a racing point of view. I want to see them obviously all being on the same lap, hopefully, but all of them at least close together. You know, even if we just had the top 3 teams, the mid-table teams, you know, the likes of Racing Point, McLaren, Renault, and then you've got maybe like Alfa Romeos, Haas, and, you know, Williams and AlphaTauri in there as well somewhere. That would be good, all having their own little battles. You know, even that would be good enough, but it means Williams are still going to have to really catch up to what they were last year. And then in terms of the drivers as well, I think, you know, George Russell has to be impressive this year. Obviously having his first year last year, easily out-qualified Robert Kubica, but both of them really struggled in that car. I think, like I said, hopefully it's different for them in terms of the actual car that the Williams bring, but I think it'll be a good battle between him and Latifi. I think Latifi coming in, obviously I think will be a lot more difficult as a teammate than Robert Kubica was. And yeah, I think they'll really give each other a good go. So I think that the biggest surprises for this season will, 1, hopefully be Williams, and 2 will be actually their drivers as well. I don't know if that's cheating by saying, you know, a couple of points, but I think Williams, should I just say Williams as a whole then, in terms of the drivers and the actual car. But yeah, biggest surprise for this season, hopefully, fingers crossed, will be Williams. And the next question is, which teammate rivalry excites you the most for this year? I mean, obviously you've got a lot. I think Verstappen Albon is an exciting lineup, because this will be Albon's first full year, hopefully, unless Red Bull decides to change again, but hopefully it'll be Albon's first full year at Red Bull alongside Verstappen. That could be interesting. Could we see battles in between, you know, between the 2 drivers at the team? That will be interesting. Obviously you've got Charles Leclerc, Sebastian Vettel. Now obviously we don't know what's happening with Vettel in terms of his contract and what's happening, in terms of him maybe leaving the sport altogether, but that'll still be a good battle. Vettel's obviously going to be thinking, well, I'm the guy that's leaving, let's just go hell for leather in terms of every race, and what happens. But the driver lineup I'm going to go with is Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon. Now, obviously, like I said, I'm a big fan of Daniel Ricciardo, but I also like and I think respect the way he's come back into the sport as well. Esteban Ocon, I think, he really is hardworking. He really was determined to get straight back in the sport after the year out. And he's been rewarded by Renault, French team, French driver. Has obviously had to wait. There was a news headline as well. I was going to put in this as well, but I'll talk about it quickly now. In the sense that Ocon's been saying, everything's gone against me to try and get back into the sport, even including, this year being delayed a little bit in terms of the season getting started. So he's absolutely right. I think it has been unlucky to say that. Obviously have to keep waiting to get back in the car and race. But yeah, I think obviously again Renault's another one. What's going to happen with Renault this year? Who knows? It's an exciting prospect to see. Have they performed to last year or have they become better than they were last year? Because McLaren were a lot better than them last year, and I think they really should have finished higher in terms of points away from them as well. But it is an exciting prospect between Ricciardo and Ocon, especially considering I think Ocon, not just being the French driver in the French team, but because Daniel Ricciardo is leaving, then I think a lot of the chips in terms of where Renault go in terms of upgrades will go towards Ocon. Because obviously Daniel Ricciardo, before the season has even started, has made the decision to leave and go to McLaren for next year. So, obviously there's still a Renault seat open alongside Ocon for 2021. So, that's still a possibility for any driver on the grid or previously on the grid, i.e. Hulkenberg, Alonso, people like that. So, yeah, it will be an interesting prospect to see how they are in their one and only year as teammates. Unless something happens in the future, but it'll be an interesting prospect to see what the two of them are like as a team, because obviously they've never raced to each other before in a team. They've never had the dynamic. They've only just sort of got used to each other probably. So yeah, that will be interesting, and I'm really looking forward to that. Obviously, being a Daniel Ricciardo fan, I hope Ricciardo prevails, but in terms of what Renault will want, they will probably want Ocon to beat Ricciardo for next year, and for this year, going into next year when Ricciardo moves to McLaren. A lot of people are saying Leclerc and Vettel still, which I agree with, but for me it is Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon. And the next question we've got on here is whose 2021 future will be the next to be decided? Now, for me, this has to be a team, not a driver. And for me, just spoken about them, but Renault are the team that has to get their driver lineup sorted for next year. They're the only top team from like top to mid-table. Well, I say that, they're not. I was going to say they're the only team that haven't decided their driver lineup yet, but Mercedes haven't decided theirs yet. I think it's sort of a formality that Lewis Hamilton will probably sign another deal, and then depending on what happens, like I said, with Bottas, that should be the same lineup, but who knows. So I'm wrong in saying that it's only Renault that haven't decided, but I think in terms of nobody really knows what Renault are going to do yet. Obviously Daniel Ricciardo has dealt a blow to them by leaving after only 1 year, and it is a bold sort of decision to go from Renault to McLaren, because we still don't know what McLaren are going to be like this year. They could be terrible, and Ricciardo halfway through the season will be wishing he hadn't moved, but it is a prediction. Look, for me, I want obviously Bottas to do well at Mercedes, but if he doesn't, I see Bottas going alongside Esteban Ocon at Renault. That's my sort of prediction, which would obviously then mean that George Russell would go alongside Hamilton at Mercedes, and we'd have a English duo at the Mercedes team. That's my prediction. I think that's what would happen if Bottas. It all depends on what Bottas does this year, and I keep saying it, but it does. I mean, he has the potential to win the Drivers' Championship this year. and really fight Lewis Hamilton for it. But if it gets to it and either, say, Verstappen, Leclerc, Vettel, Hamilton, any of the other drivers look like they're going to obviously beat Bottas for the championship, and maybe Bottas has had another off season, then for me, I think he would be the one who Renault would go for. I don't see any of the others being like really important to be decided. I think Alex Albon, well, depending on his results, so again that might be halfway through the season after maybe the first 8 races in Europe. Red Bull will then decide what they're going to do for next year. I think they're obviously going to decide before the season finishes, but I think they're still going to have a few races to decide that. Maybe like the summer break like they did with Gasly last year. Sebastian Vettel, I think, Vettel not announcing straight away. He's sort of, let's just see what happens. Who rings me, who I get a call from. Like I said in the last video, Mark Webber's already said that he thinks Vettel's going to take a year out. So I'm not sure Vettel's really in a rush to decide what he's going to do. Just seeing what anybody else has put. Esteban Ocon. Look, Esteban Ocon could go to Mercedes. He's still an option if Valtteri Bottas again maybe doesn't prevail. But I think George Russell would be chosen over Ocon, just because I think Renault would try their utmost to keep Ocon. Now, I think there would be a way that Ocon could just go and leave the contract, but I don't think that would be the case. I think that's wouldn't happen. But yeah, the people that I think need to decide on their driver lineup for next year and need to get it done as quick as possible is Renault. But like I said, it all depends on for me personally, it could be other people. It could be, like I said, Fernando Alonso, it could be Nico Hulkenberg, could be anybody in terms of who Renault go for, could be Sebastian Vettel, but I think it would be down to Bottas. So yeah, they will be the ones to decide their future first, but I think it all depends on Bottas as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. Have you revised, next question is, have you revised your tip for the drivers and constructors title since Australia? So obviously we've had a few months now since since March, when the Australian Grand Prix was supposed to go ahead. Have I changed my mind on the drivers and constructors title since Australia? The answer to me would be no. I'm still in that zone of thinking Valtteri Bottas will win the Drivers' Championship, and I know I'll probably get a lot of stick for that because people just don't maybe believe in Bottas. They don't think he would ever prevail, especially when you have Lewis Hamilton as a teammate. But I think what a perfect opportunity. If you're Valtteri Bottas, what a perfect opportunity this year with the less races to go head to head with Lewis Hamilton. Even if you think it's your last year, just go for it. Just fight for every single overtake, fight for every single point for this year, and just go hell for leather. Honestly, that would be me. If I obviously know, like Bottas is, if I didn't have a contract for next year, I sort of had a feeling that it may be my last year at Mercedes, with obviously George Russell impressing at Williams, then I would just go full out and just give it everything. So for me, that's what Bottas has to do. I've stuck with that since the beginning of the year, and I will continue to stick with it, and hopefully for me he will prevail, but who knows. And in terms of constructors title, I picked Mercedes because I just don't think anybody throughout the prolonged year, even though it's a shortened calendar, I still think Mercedes overall will have the best package to win the Constructors' Championship again. I think obviously Red Bull will start the season better because obviously the first 2 races are their home Grand Prix, so if they didn't, it would be very disappointing for them. So I think Max, Red Bull, Honda should really prevail in the first couple of races, even at Hungary as well, because I think that's a circuit that's sort of designed for their car, especially the sort of the twisty bits of the first and second sector. But yeah, who knows? I mean, for me, I still think, from what I said in March, I'm still going with Bottas, and I'm still going with Mercedes to win the drivers and constructors titles. So have my tips changed since Australia? The answer is no. And that is the end of the video. Thank you very much for sort of watching and listening. Like I said, there will be a couple more videos this week, hopefully, in regards to the preview of the first race of the season. I will be doing another video, hopefully, on another channel, but I will try and link it here as well with my good friend Jamie Davis. We'll be talking about Formula 1 as well, so I'll try and link that in my stuff as well. So we'll be doing a couple of videos this week. We also the F1 game is coming out, so I might be doing a couple of videos on that, which will be quite cool, because it looks really exciting this year for the F1 game. So yeah, we may be doing a few things on that. But yeah, I really look forward to doing the preview of the first race of the season. Finally, it's July, but finally we are getting the first race of the year now in Formula 1. Looking forward to it, and I look forward to doing the preview. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the Austrian Grand Prix Formula 1 preview. See you soon.